Hi,
Uh,
I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Barney Saltzberg, who is an author. He's an artist, and also I was going to say magician. He's a musician. He might also be a magician for
I
all I
say
know.
that. Yeah.
And anyway, he has written around 50, I guess, picture books for
Yep.
children.
Yep.
And for readers unfamiliar with your work, Barney, how would you describe what you write?
Hmm. Well, first, let me stop. First of all, it's nice to see you. Honored to do this. And you said something that everyone does say, but I always take some of an issue with it, which is picture books for children, because I'm a big believer that we're never too old for a picture book.
That's true.
So,
Yes.
so it is the common thing because people will say to me, "Are you still writing for children? Like, when are you going to write a real book?" I, they're an amazing format. So I like to spread the wealth and tell everyone, even if you're reading chapter books, you can read a picture book because the stories are stories. So I don't know that I could sum this up in one, line or two, because I do so many different types of books. I mean, I've got interactive books, I've got board books, I have concept books that are, I call them the creating of them, thinking with my hands, things that I just kind of play with paper and see what happens, stream of consciousness books, and then stories. So I kind
Mhm.
of, I don't sit there and think I've got to write in this genre. It's sort of whatever comes out, and then we kind of plug it in, hopefully in some area.
And actually, I've heard that you lecture on creativity and where ideas come from.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny. It started years ago. I got one of those emails that you kind of look the person up to go, are they for real? But I did get an email from the United States State Department, and I thought when we had one, and they had a cultural.
Whoa.
We had a no, we do now again. We cultural
Yes.
exchange program where they sent me to China for 14 days to talk about
Mhm.
creativity. They sent me to Russia to talk about creativity. And that's when I started realizing that I could talk about how I work. And in the coming years, since ensuing years after that, I met a woman who was a professor of the science of creativity at the University of Buffalo named Dr. Cindy Burnett. And we have done an entire series of exercises, videos on a channel that we have called Creativity on YouTube. And we've been working on creative thinking skills. And she's taught me so much and articulated things that I do innately, but has, language to describe it and help other people try it. So it's really become a big part of who I am and what I do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Speaking of creativity, can you tell us a little bit about your latest book? And I see it's right behind you.
I got a couple of them. This is a
Oh,
funny
yeah.
story. This is a book that
Yeah.
honestly, I've done a few media things with this. We have not talked about how difficult this book was to sell. I'm in Los Angeles, and many years ago, I was at a private school doing a talk about writing and illustrating. And one of the moms who was running the book fair was Jamie Lee Curtis. And she walked up to me and said, with an outstretched hand to shake mine, "I'm Jamie Lee Curtis and I hate you." And I said, "I knew who you were, and why do you hate me?" And she said, "Because you illustrate your own books." And I said, "Well, I'd love to illustrate one of yours, but I know Laura, the woman that illustrates your books, is sort of your person." And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you also get to go on David Letterman, so I could hate you to promote your books." But I had to say that she was doing books out of all the movie stars that I felt like really stood up. And they could have been published by just a writer, but the fact that she was a star made them even more
Mhm.
popular. At least they got into more people's hands. Anyway, we kept bumping into each other. And one day I was doing a book signing at a store, and when everyone left, I was signing copies for the store. And I look up and she's standing there with her arms folded. And she said, "I didn't know you were going to be here." I said, "I didn't know you were going to be here." And she comes back with a stack of my books with all Post-its in it that I can autograph to people. And she hands me her phone number and her email and says, "We should hang out." Like, oh, okay. And I was working on a book, which I have somewhere around here, called Would You Rather Be a Princess or a Dragon?
Mhm.
And I thought I was having issues. So I thought she'd get it. So I asked her if I could take her to coffee. It's a long-winded answer, sorry. And she asked if she could come over. And I said, sure. And she came out here into my studio and saw what began to be, let me see if I have a copy of it somewhere. Well, what ultimately turned into Beautiful Oops. And she was so excited, she wrote a blurb that went on the front of the book that I think helped people see it. And this book's been out for 11 years and continues to sell more every year. Since that day, she started sending me texts of photographs. And I would drop everything I was doing. I would get my iPad, and I've got my little trusty pencil on it, and I would draw on her picture and send it back. And to get a response from her was really fun, because I can't repeat some of the things she said, but they were really, really inspiring and encouraging me. So this became this dance of her photographs and my drawings. And one day she said, let's go to lunch and talk about making this into a book. And I love the idea. I actually thought about a coffee table book, but no one wanted to publish it because it wasn't written by Jamie Lee Curtis. It was photography by Jamie Lee Curtis. And we thought that shouldn't matter. We actually, even when I submitted it initially, it just said by the two of us. It didn't delineate anything. And thank goodness for Creston Books, which is a small house up in the Bay Area in California. They took the book. And for that long answer, this is what we have. And it's by me with photographs by Jamie Lee Curtis. And there's a very fun picture, same hat, in the back of the book. So this is really one of those stories. It's not a story, a linear story per se, but a book that I didn't understand until we had seen all the pictures together. And the concept, the takeaway, when you look at what she saw, a seashell, and what I drew, it became the takeaway for us was two people can look at the same thing, see it completely differently, and still be friends, which I feel like right now is a really aspirational concept that I want to get out into the world. So I'm thrilled that this came out March 1st, and we're doing as much as we can to let people know about it. So that was a very long answer. Thank you for being patient.
No, that is a great answer. And I think it's a great concept. It's wonderful especially for nowadays. So that was kind of the inspiration.
Yeah, and another just last thing on it is I realized that I see faces and embellishments in a lot of things, whether it's a crack on the sidewalk or peeled paint. And I just sort of took it for granted that everyone did. And I'm finding that I get a lot of letters from people going, we never looked at things this way before. And now we are. And I love that it sort of opened up some things for people to kind of play in a different way. And I've really become an advocate for play for people of all ages, because I feel like we stop. So this helps promote that idea.
Yeah, and this definitely goes back to what you were saying about the books are not just for children, because this concept is for everybody.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what kind of research, if any, went into writing this?
None.
Okay, I didn't think so.
I'm trying to think. When I've done research for some books, but this one, no, this was really just once we had a body of work, kind of combing through them and seeing which images stood up better. I mean, there's a lot of pictures that didn't make it into the book, but no real research. You do look at titles to make sure that there's not 10,000 books with the same title. This isn't the only book called What Do You See? But I think by tagging on a conversation and pictures, it set it apart. But yeah, not a lot of research.
Do you have a favorite research story from any of your books?
Let me think. It's so funny. I have such my pattern for the way my brain works. Oh, good. I'm getting a phone call now. I'm going to turn this off. is sometimes after the fact. So a lot of people do a lot of research so they can then write their story. I sometimes will do research after a story. So when Beautiful Oops came out, I see you look understandably puzzled. I didn't do it in the same way that I realized this book showed how two people can see the same thing and have different perspectives and still be friends. That was an afterthought. It wasn't like a conscious, I'm going to write a book where we teach that. When Beautiful Oops came out, it was a book that was created because teachers saw that I was showing in my presentations how I fix my mistakes in art, and it has much larger ramifications and implications. After Oops came out, I started doing research about that whole concept and realized that there was this whole wealth of information about businesses that celebrated mistakes, because which is an interesting concept. Like one, and I wish I had written down who it was. This is my lack of research. But one company I read about, again, after the book came out, every Friday at 10 a.m., everyone would gather together and they would talk about the biggest mistake that they encountered during the week and how they addressed it and were able to solve it. And I just thought that simple concept of openly speaking about it changed the culture in an office, in an environment, and it would in a classroom or in a home, as opposed to being dinged for making a mistake.
Huh?
Like, wow, you really found a way to turn that around. And it's such a simple concept. And for certain types of learners, myself included, if I knew that the mistake was part of the process, it would allow me to be more free as to what I was willing to explore, as opposed to, I'm afraid to make a mistake because everyone's going to make fun of me. So again, this was sort of dyslexic research. After the fact, I did it backwards. So most of my stories are really from things that have happened in my life, or witnessing with my kids, or feelings I've had. I'll do some, I have a book coming out in August called I Want to Be Mad for a While. So I did a little bit of reading as to, how we deal with that for our children, and how, different ways to respond. Or I'll call, I have a very dear friend, Betsy Brown Braun, who's written a ton of books on child development, like Tell Me What to Say. She gives scenarios and then 3 different responses for a parent. I'm sure you have some of her books in your store. I will call her and ask her questions, developmental questions that will help my stories, but not a lot of research.
Now, you just brought me to my next question is, what else can we expect from you in the near future? And that's one.
Yeah, again, if I had planned, I would bring things out and show you, but I do have, I Want to Be Mad for a While, which actually came from a children's song that I wrote. And I was always kind of blown away, because I would do kids concerts, or when I go to speak at a school, I'll bring a guitar. And when I would sing I Want to Be Mad for a While, I would ask the kids to make fists. And every time I said the word mad, I wanted them to scream it. And it was like a really cathartic experience, especially in a group, because everybody had this, moment of being able to just go mad. And it was a great outlet. And I thought it was a little preachy, because it felt like it was a book more tailored to parents that would say it's okay for your kid to be mad for a little bit, and you too, actually, because we have this thing about, smile, be happy. And I think there's a moment where you can let it go for a bit and just sort of own it and then move on. So that's really what the book came out. It's a scholastic book. I wasn't sure if it would work, but they really, after having heard the song, said, can you make this into a book? So that's coming out. And I'm doing a book for a new imprint called Hippo Park, which is Astra is the larger company that owns them. They own a sort of a collection of small prints. And I have a book called A Story coming out. And I'm a huge fan of Emily Gravett. If you don't know her work, she's a British illustrator and writer. And she really had planted the seed on one of her books, many of her books, that talks about the physicality of a book. Like we just sort of take it for granted. And a few of my books, I kind of explore this package we have of a, bound pages, and what could you do to play with that shape and the concept of it. So a story deals, I'm not going to give anything away other than it's a new take on the physicality of a book with a mouse as our guide.
Oh, that sounds
I think
interesting.
that'll be 24 though when it comes out. Things are taking a while.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard they take a lot longer now than they used to.
Yes.
Yeah. So, as far as your songs go, do you often write songs that sorry, do you often write songs that go along with your books?
I do. I mean, I've done 4 kids albums, and each one is named after a song. A song.
Mhm.
That's good. It's named after a book. That a
Okay.
song too. So the first, well, this
Yeah.
one, they again, no linear ways here. Some went the other way around. So the first song I wrote for kids was called "Where's My Underwear," which you'd think that was a fairly obvious. I had no idea what I was getting into going into a school singing that, and I was with a man named Wally. I just lost his last name, who owned Hunt. Wally Hunt had individual books. They made a lot of pop-up books, and we had a lunch where he said, "You have to take that song and make it into a book." And we made a pop-up book where an elephant's looking for his underwear because you couldn't have a kid doing it. And yeah, maybe you could, but we didn't. And then yeah, I think Crazy Hair Day was a story first. That was my
Mhm.
last kids album. And then I wrote a song to go with it. So I like to kind of do that both. Not every song on each album is a book, but usually the title track is inspired by a book or inspired a book. How's that?
That sounds great.
Yeah.
So, what is the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out? What do you see?
Well, the biggest challenge was nobody wanted it. That was hard.
Okay.
And to the point that my agent said maybe we should, you know, stop because no one's taking it. And Jamie at one point said, we've had so many rejections, maybe we should stop. And I'm not a person to give up easily. So I was determined to find a way to sell it. And so that was a huge challenge. Bigger than I expected. I just thought, well, this is a book with Jamie Lee Curtis. Everyone's going to want it. Not the case. So that, again, I mentor writers, and I always say you have to put your ego in a box and bury it in the yard. And that's
Mhm.
usually for editorial criticism. This was, in this case, it was more not wanting to let go of what I knew was a good idea.
Mhm.
And to not be shut down by all the rejections. And that's so common. I think it's the Kate DiCamillo. There's a thing that she talks about her first book, how it was rejected 400 times. 400. I didn't know there were 400 publishers. Maybe it was the same guy 400 times. I don't know. But if you give a mouse a cookie, 9 times. And once it was rejected by an editor at Harper, and another editor at Harper ultimately took it. So it's the resilience in not giving up. That was a really huge part. And then it becomes, how do you get word out? Because you put out a book, and how do people know about it? That's a huge part. I'm not really great at that yet. One would think after 50 books I'm good at it, but no, it's still difficult. And it's, as an author, to walk into a bookstore and go to the alphabetized section and not see Saltzberg, it happens more times than I like to admit.
Wow.
So I'm not everywhere, and I'm certainly not a household name. There's Sendek and Silverstein, as in Shell.
Yeah.
Salzburg isn't always there. So getting books out into the world and having people know about it, because there's nothing worse than spending years on a project, putting out a book, and no response to it. And that can happen and has way more times than I'd like to admit.
That is
The
a real
reality.
challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that that is the most challenging part of the writing process and
Well,
the whole?
I mean, look at this point in time, I can write a story. I've proven that. It's not an easy process ever. It's never. I mean, you'll see me draw and I can draw quickly, but to actually draw a book, just as in writing, I will write a story over and over and over again, even though I might get an initial first draft. Brene Brown talks about, I don't know that I can swear on here, but your first draft not being so great, and just to get it out, so from that rough draft to a finished piece, it's a process. And again, it's sort of being tenacious and not stopping because it's not working. I mean, I have stories that I'm still working on for years. And it is crazy because you look at a picture book, this one takes about 30 seconds to read it. I mean, it's not a huge thing here. You think, well, did it take you 30 seconds to write? No, it took a couple of years to really get this right. So it's just staying with it. And I had an editor a million years ago say to me, try to avoid sitcom endings, where like everything was great. And I mean, you do want to hopefully have some closure and some positivity at the end of the story, but to have characters grow from the experience is something I'm very conscious of when I'm writing. And if there's an element of surprise, I'm in love with a story. Kevin Henkes taught me that, not that we're friends, we've met and had dinner together, but the way he writes and that extra beat, I try to take that into consideration when I can, so that you think you're done and you go, oh, I love that. So all those things come into play when I'm working on a story, and coming up with them when you figured it out, you go, why did this take so long? But getting that simple thing can take a very long time.
So what's your favorite part of being a writer, on the whole writing and publishing process?
Gosh, I don't know that I could give you one. I feel extremely lucky that I get to come up and out into this space every day. I've never had a regular job. I think it would be frightening for anyone to hire me. So that part is amazing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there are things that I love a finished story when it works. I love, once I've written the story, putting on great music and doing my artwork. That's I can't listen to music with lyrics when I'm writing because I have to be focused on what I'm writing. But that part, when I get to actually embellish the story and have the images come to life, is an amazing part. Having a story work. I mean, so there's different segments of it all that I don't think I can give you one favorite. I just think it's a magical process. You did say magician. That's when I think I am at that point, Again, it looks simple. And there's a wonderful book Abrams put out on the art of Maurice Sendak. And there's a chapter on the art of a picture book. And he talks about making something that seems so simple, so seamless, and how hard it is. And he says, if one seam out of place and you've lost the whole thing, but that, and so it's something I've been working on. And I feel like after so many books, and at my age, I'm about to turn 67. I was 26 when I sold my first book. And I've learned so much in the process. And I feel like there isn't a formula for me. Every book's different. Every getting an ideas comes from different places every time. And that whole part of the process is magical to me, where I'm going to get the next idea.
So do you actually visualize everything first? Yeah, I mean, do you know?
Sometimes, no. I mean, as far as like what it's going to physically look like.
Yeah.
No. I'm gonna see if I can grab a book. Do you mind me moving for a second? If I can figure out where this is, one sec. I'll show you something that makes me really, oh gosh, it'd be so great if I had a copy of it. Well, I'll describe it because I don't know where the book is.
Okay, that's okay.
I had a lovely relationship with the editor, Arthur Levine, who some people might know from the book Harry Potter that he kind of championed and edited. They all say an Arthur Levine book. And I did a story, which should be here somewhere, called Mrs. Morgan's Lawn. And it was a story I did a million years ago. I think 93 it came out. And it was about my neighbor growing up in Los Angeles. And every time my ball rolled onto her lawn, she took it. She was not a nice neighbor. And there's a line in the story that said, somewhere inside of her house must be a closet full of balls. What could you do with all of them? And in my book dummy that I drew, which is what we send a mock-up of how we, if you're an illustrator, you illustrate it. And I do them in black and white because you want them to know that you're willing to make changes. If someone sends in a full color book dummy, it's a little chances are that an editor will look at it and go, he doesn't want to change this. He's invested too much. So I always do black and white. So I drew a picture of a boy with his baseball cap on thinking, and there was a thought balloon over his head, and there was a closet full of balls. And Arthur said the most brilliant thing to me, which was, you already told us there was a closet full of balls. We can imagine it. Don't draw it, because that was literally what I wrote. Part of the sentence that he found fascinating and wanted me to think about was, what could you do with all of them? So I had to go back and think about it. And I ended up drawing a picture of Mrs. Morgan, and it's not in the thought balloon, it's a full spread. Because he's imagining it. The line says, somewhere inside of her house must be a closet full of balls. What could you do with all of them? And the image is Mrs. Morgan as a witch reading a book that says great ball recipes, and she's stirring a cauldron with balls in it. That, and you're laughing because it's that juxtaposition and what it adds to the story, the richness that is. So there's a million illustrators who can draw so much better than I can. Yeah, I'm the first to admit it. What I've learned and that really planted the seed way back when was to, what can I bring to the story visually? So I don't always know. So to sit here and have this, vision of what the book's going to look like when I write it, no. I mean, maybe a shot here or there, but it's looking at that text and chewing on it and letting it marinate, and food ideas here, seeing what evolves, and then having choices and going, well, this one might be fun, but that one might be better, and weighing it out and driving my family crazy. I'll be sending them pictures. Which one do you guys like? Like Dad, or my wife. Yeah. So, that's what I go to bed thinking about, and I wake up thinking about, because it's something I'm always working on.
So you write the whole story first, and then you illustrate.
Not always. I don't think you'll find anything I do that's got a straight path. No, sometimes I used to do this, like in my sketchbooks. I'll be working on a story and I'll be like stuck. Like, let's just, can I give you an example? I'll draw on here real quick. So let's say, give me a character. What do we have a story about? Well, since I've been drawing mice, we'll do a mice story. So I've got a mouse, and he's got to make a big decision because whatever's supposed to be happening is about to happen. And I don't really know how I'm going to transition from wherever he was to making that decision. So I might just be like sitting around drawing a mouse, and so we don't know if this is a happy decision or a scary decision, right now, because I haven't really made up the story that we're playing with. But I'm going to just do this. I have no room for his body. And just because I said that, I dropped his tail. He's thinking, And that tale to me is an almost like what you can also do the same kind of line on his. Now we know that he is contemplating with the same kind of droop over his eyes. And that starts to shade how the story might change. Like, as opposed to these are not Rembrandt, just in case you're wondering.
Van Gogh.
Yeah. That's a whole different emotion, and that might color the way I write. So sometimes if I'm stuck, I will draw the characters for a while, and they'll be standing there, and you go, oh, now I know his mood, which I hadn't thought about when I was writing it. So it's a back and forth process sometimes, or sometimes I will write the whole story. Sometimes then it becomes like an audition, like you would back in LA for a casting call, like who's going to be the character in the story? Is it a human? Is it an animal? I did a book also for Creston, the same publisher that did my book with Jamie, called Enough is Enough. And it's a story having two kids myself with my wife, an older daughter and a younger son. I noticed that my son had a tendency to take up a lot of room in the house, and my daughter sometimes needed to give herself a break. And I wanted to create a story where I could model a girl giving herself a timeout from a situation that she didn't like because she was being bullied by her brother. So it's like, well, what animal would this be? Because I like doing animals because I feel like any race, any sex will kind of, it neutralizes everything and everyone can relate. I'm not picking a particular character or a human. So I thought, well, what animal doesn't get angry very often? I don't know if this is even true, but I thought visually a sheep. I just thought sheep just seem sort of benign. And as soon as I did that, I was like, yes, this is my character. So a lot of thought goes into that stuff.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So what is the greatest lesson that you've learned so far in your writing career?
Well, I'll tell you that I had a lot of trouble in school. You can probably imagine because I couldn't answer anything straight. Spelling terrible, grammar atrocious. I did have an 8th grade teacher say, your spelling is terrible, your grammar is atrocious, but I like your ideas. The idea that I became a writer with the kind of grades I was getting in school is remarkable. And I'm still friends with that teacher. I thank her for recognizing something that I didn't see in myself. So I think the greatest lesson is two-part for me. I'm just thinking this now. One is tenacity, the concept of not giving up, being flexible. This is the third part now, because you never send in a story that an editor goes, oh my God, this is perfect. There's going to be some work. And so letting go of this is how it has to be, but playing with what you've done with another person is a huge relationship, and finding a way to make that work, and finding a voice, which I feel like is something that I'm always trying to get across to anybody who comes to me for writing help. Like, make this believable, breathe life into this character so that we care about them. So finding that part and holding on to it from the spark of that idea to a finished product. It's a huge process. So I just feel like I've learned patience.
So would that be your best piece of advice that you give to future writers?
Gosh, I don't know that I have one piece, read everything. It's remarkable to me how many people I meet who think they can write a kid's book because they're going to teach something, and you immediately turn off a kid when they feel like they're being taught. If you can sneak that into a story, that's a whole other thing. But reading a lot of books, and I felt like the people that come to me haven't read a lot of kids' books as an adult. They might have read them when they were a kid, but to really familiarize yourself and and don't feel like you're writing unless it's like you've got to really work on your vocabulary. If it's a really young story, write the story without thinking about who you're selling this to. Like, tell the story you need to tell, and you'll figure it out later. My students always count their words, and it's like, write your story.
Good point. Good point. So are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you'd recommend to other writers that might have helped you with your career?
Well, I joined SCBWI, which is the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. Lynn, who ran it for all these years, has just stepped down, so I'm not sure what it's going to look like now. I feel like they have satellite critique groups all over the world. I met some other writers in LA. I don't know that we were all, I guess we were all members, but it wasn't organized through SCBWI. But we had a writers group, and we met every other week for a really long time. And one of the things that I do with the women that I mentor right now is have someone else read your story to you, because you need to hear it differently. We all know how to read our books, our stories that we've written, but what might roll off your tongue because you're familiar with it might not happen so easily with another person reading it. So it's really important. You can't be at a bookstore or a library and go, no, you're reading that wrong. Like, it has to stand up. So in that collective of other writers, to have someone else read it and give feedback, it's a really delicate dance, because you have to be kind when you're working on things with other people. I know that when I taught at UCLA writing and illustration for a while, and really went over critiquing, like, because you can destroy somebody in 2 seconds if you don't think about it. And my delivery is not always sweet, and I have to work on that too. And I will tend to find what I feel like isn't working in the story. And Peggy Rathman, who won the Caldecott for Officer Buckle and Gloria, once said, find 3 nice things to say first and then kill them. No, and but and I have to remember that. So all part of the soup.
Okay. Now I have some questions about you as a person.
Uh-oh.
What's one thing that most people don't realize about you?
I'm so out there. I don't know that there's any secrets at this point. I'm not shy, as you can tell. And I will always say, if I was caught by the enemy, they wouldn't have to torture me. I would just tell them everything.
That's unusual for a writer not to be shy.
Well, I was painfully shy growing up. I actually was. But one of the things that really altered me was I was a singing waiter. If you really want to go deep into the weeds, you can Google online. There's an article I wrote called Memoirs of a Singing Waiter. And I had to walk into a restaurant without a microphone and entertain a room. And you started off as a singing busboy. Maybe they won't know this about me. And it was really a confront to do this. Like, it's a Friday night, the place is the 3-hour wait, and I've got 3 minutes before the food's up, and I'm going to grab a guitar and go, ladies and gentlemen, hi. That pushes you out of being shy fast. And what I didn't realize, talking about any job somehow connects your life. For me to stand up in front of 500 kids in an auditorium, with a microphone, I felt, I was trained in a restaurant. So there, that thing that probably a lot of people don't know. I was a singing waiter for 2.5 years.
Okay. So what is or are your passions when you're not writing? And how do you make time for the things? Yeah.
I play music a lot. A lot. And since the pandemic, it's been really hard to play with other people. But I'm actually having a birthday this month, and I invited a bunch of musicians to play in the backyard. We're going to all play outside, and we haven't done that since the pandemic started as a group. Yeah, I mean, I was possessed with a song idea. A friend of ours passed away recently, and I just for my way of processing, I had to write a song for him. So like for the last week, I've been just in my head getting the lyrics figured out and the music figured out, and playing late into the night before I go to sleep and first thing in the morning. That's my wife talks about how people have to find the thing that makes them, whether they meditate or take walks. For me to pick up a stringed instrument and play, I get lost in that, and I make time. I just make time. When my wife's out of town, I keep a guitar in the bathroom. Don't do that while she's home. But yeah, I'll play anywhere.
The humidity is not good for guitars.
No, but the acoustics in the bathroom are great. Yeah. Yeah. That's how I started writing kids songs. My daughter would be in the bathtub when she was little, and I would, sit around with her and I'd take a guitar and we would just make up songs, but while she was taking a bath, and make up silly songs, but the sound in there is amazing. I actually recorded a song in the shower, not with the water running, for the acoustics in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what does your writing space look like? And
blessed.
what do you need to have around you when you're writing or editing?
You're in my writing space.
Okay.
And I have two monitors here. So I'm talking to you on one, and I have what they call, it's a Wacom or Wacom, WACOM, Cintiq monitor that actually is adjustable, and I draw on it. So I write where you and I are, and I draw over there. But I live with this iPad. I mean, it opens up, it's got the keyboard in it. And I travel with this. I take this, if I'm going to the dentist, I'll be, waiting in the waiting room on it. So I always have something to jot down an idea, whether it's visually or writing. And I'll work anywhere.
Wow.
This is where I come out to work, but I take it with me. I'm about to go to New York for 10 days. I'll be working on the plane. I'll be working while we're there.
Now, do you like to have music when you're working, or silence?
Somebody asked that, and that's when I realized what I said earlier, which is that when I'm writing, I can listen to instrumental music, classical or jazz or even folk music that's instrumental. Quiet music, have never listened to like marching band music while I'm trying to write. And then once I'm doing artwork, I'll listen to anything. And what's fun about that, like painting, if it is got some rhythm to it, I'll find that I'm painting in the strokes of the music, which is always kind of cool. Or silence. Silence is a different way to work too. I'll do that as well, but mostly music, instrumental for writing, lyrics for art.
And it looks like you have coffee with you. Is there any food or drinks? Food or drinks or things like that?
We've become LaCroix people, so we drink a lot of bubble water around here. Bubble water and coffee. And you'd think I'd have a bathroom out here. I don't. I have to go back into the house. There's a story there. So I don't know what it is, but there is one somewhere.
Write a book about it.
Yeah. I'm censoring the titles I have right now. So yeah, no special food. No.
Okay.
No.
And writers often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions to help them. And I heard a certain bark in the background.
Well, they were leaving. They go to camp twice a week. This is LA. Come on. I have a person pick them up in a big truck van. We have two big dogs. We have a golden retriever lab/goat. And we have a golden doodle, which everybody has now. They're government issued in LA. If you come in LA, like they give you a golden doodle. They're big, like 65 and 75 pounds. So twice a week, someone takes them running up into the hills for the day, and they come home not tired enough personally, but tired. And otherwise, I do have morning walk and an evening walk with them, but and they're usually in here. Did you ever see Arlo Needs Glasses? A book I did. Unfortunately, It's out of print. They're actually finding a way to redo it. I'm looking for all my books. They're all hiding. No. Oh, here, I have a German one. I had a white golden doodle named Arlo. And
Oh,
this was an interactive book that Workman did. And it was a great book for any kid who was getting glasses, because there's actually cardboard glasses you can try on in the book. But it got so expensive to make, and this one's shrink wrapped, so I'm not going to open it. They're actually, as of this week, they're going to re-release it with less bells and whistles in it. But he was a huge part of my heart and life. He only lived till 6, but he was an 85-pound golden doodle. And I married my wife. She had a dog that was so amazing. I knew she'd be a great mom. There were some other attributes I liked about her as well, but we've always had at least 2 dogs. Yeah, I don't really like you, but I like your dog, so I'll marry you. No, it didn't work that way.
so I gather they don't hinder you while you're working because they're away, right?
Well, that's just twice a week. I mean, yesterday I was working out here, and Ollie, who was the doodle, we have these squeaky balls that I have to hide from him. And he'll like shove his head on my leg while I'm writing with the ball in his mouth, squeaking it. So I will take, unplanned throwing breaks just to give him something to do for a bit. But that can be a little, certainly don't want to record music when that happens, because there's these squeaking things happening. So they interrupt me that way, but no. And at noon and at 9, they have snacks, and they're Pavlovian. They know, and they come in here about a half hour before their snacks and bug me. So it does force me to get out of my chair, because sometimes I realize I've been in it for 8 hours. So it's not bad.
Uh-huh. I just have 2 more questions for you. One is, where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester?
No.
And
well, here's the thing. Look at the time you're taking.
Yes.
I'm such a supporter of mom and pop independent bookstores. I know you can save 10% if you go online, but go to the bookstore. Peter Reynolds has a bookstore outside of Boston.
Yes.
And he used to talk about how people would come in there and they'd ask, I have sibling rivalry book. What do you suggest? There's a death in the family. We lost a pet. What do you suggest? And then they go outside and start ordering it on their phone. It's like, wait a minute, you just asked me all these questions. Mom and pop stores, I wouldn't be able to do this career without you guys. So mom and pop stores. You won't find all my books. I'm sure you don't have them all either, and I don't blame anyone. It's just I have a million different publishers that I work with. My website, which is barneysaltzberg.com, shows you all the books that are currently in print and a lot more that are out of print. And people do, research. Although I get calls from people or emails saying that they want Arlo needs glasses because their kid's getting glasses and they wanted a book for them. And it's somehow, for some reason, used online is around $800. Go figure. Don't buy that. But yeah, so I would go to the independent stores.
Thank you. And I always, in every video, I do a plug for Annie's Bookstop of Worcester. If we don't have any of Barney's books, we will try and get them for you. Yeah. So you can call us at 508-796-5613, or you can send us email at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. So that was my plug.
Yes.
And my last question is, how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
I have Instagram, which is my name, Barney Saltzberg. I do have Facebook pages, which again is my name. Those are places. I do try to post on Instagram a lot, just because I have younger children who tell me I need to do that. I was putting pictures of, he's about to be 15 months old grandson, and I was putting his pictures up, and my daughter go, "Dad, it's not your brand." I was like, I know, but he's my grandson. But I try to do drawings and music stuff when I get inspired. But those are really, Instagram and Facebook are the best places to go at this point.
And your webpage?
To Annie's. I know you're gonna, this is like a real tough one, but it's barneysaltzberg.com. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with me
It was
today.
an honor. Thank you for inviting
It
me.
was really enjoyable. I really enjoyed talking to you,
Thank you.
and good luck with your books.
Thank
And
you.
hopefully we will be seeing you around.
Someday I'll have to come out there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that would be
Okay.
wonderful,
Well, thank
especially
you
when the
again.
pandemic is over. Okay.
Yes, fine.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks very much.
my pleasure.
Bye.